roll call should I restart since we weren't recording?
No, you're good. Sorry. I can start with roll call. Raina Moore,
Here.
Raina Hurley, not seeing or hearing Raina Hurley, Tiffany Anaya,
Here.
and Rolanda Hughes.
Here.
Quorum is established.
Okay. So now do we still need to do introductions since you did roll call?
If you would like to open it up for the members on Zoom or for those in the room to introduce themselves, you can.
Okay, perfect. We'll start with ORJ staff that's in the room. Hi, Kimmy. Yeah.
Hello, good morning, Garyana Youngblood. I'm with the Office of Reentry and Justice.
Nicole Green. I am the chair of the Community Advisory Board here for support. Hello, everybody.
And Ricardo, would you like to come off of mute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ricardo. I'm with the Safe Return Project.
Welcome. And Jennifer, would you like to come off of mute and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Brueggemann. I'm a program manager with the ORJ. I'm pretty new here, so nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Great to see you. Hi, Rena. And we have another board member present, so.
Good morning, I'm Rena Hurley and I represent West County.
So now that we've all got introductions and roll call, we can move on to the next agenda item. Public comment on any item under jurisdiction or that's not listed on the current agenda. I don't see any here in the room, so Nicole?
You know I'm polite. I'm not going to talk till you call my name. It's not on the agenda because, of course, it came after we did the agenda planning meeting. But just from our full cap meeting, I just wanted to highlight some items to bring back and circle back around to programs and services that we could probably talk about if you want at the next meeting. But it's going to be around the AB 109 summit. And I know that Rolanda did take some great notes to share with you on that as well. So I definitely want to be able to have that conversation. I believe everyone there today at the table was available for that. It is going to be on, is April? What day I tell you, Tiffany? April the 10th or this?
16th.
What she said. It's going to be on that particular day. And I wanted to circle it back around to you all because from a programs and services standpoint, we will need to update the program grid that we have. I'm not sure if it was passed out. It probably, I'm not, it's not on the agenda. So I'm not sure if you all have it, but if not, we can have it sent out to you as we'll need to update that. We do have our current CBOs on there, which is great, but they're also asking for information regarding the provider. So I wanted to be able to have that discussion with you all here on how involved we want to be and how do we want to do that. And I think it's simply just adding the county providers on a different tab, just with the information and phone number, not really going too deep into it. But I did want to circle that back. And Tiffany, you were at that meeting. So I don't know if you want to give them all an update since you're in the room versus me on Zoom on what happened on that particular day. But I wanted to circle that back around the programs and services because that will be where we would actually work on it, would be here.
Thank you for bringing that up, Nicole. Yes, I was a part of that meeting and I know that Santa Clara County had extended sharing their what we call a program and service grid with us just to support the regional approach idea or our members who are, jumping on the train and across to another county. So I personally like the idea of also not just for sharing externally purposes, but it may also be supportive for our board here or for anyone else who may not be familiar with the information, but I'm not sure how the rest of you all feel around adding like county entities, whether it be AODS or mental health, Office of Ed, EHSD, things.
That'd be awesome, personally. Like, have it all right there. Like,
Okay. And then what my goal is to look at that. Patrice did send me the Excel version of it, so I'll be looking at that and then following up with RJ next week. So I can work smarter, not harder, and have that put together. And then I'll ask Garyana to send it out to you all, just for your final look at it, or if you all have any programs that you think we want to share. Again, their goal is for all the counties that are participating. They're asking us all to provide that information because the goal is to find a way to provide any inter county transfer. So if someone, for example, got arrested in Santa Clara County, but they're from Contra Costa County, they want to be able to know what those services are to be able to get them back over here. So at the end, the result should be a document that provides services for all the counties that are participating. And another part that I would ask you to all talk about eventually would be what programs we want to invite. So, of course, we can invite our CBOs, right? But they want to open it up for any other programs. For example, like Randy, you ever remember Safe Return if they want to go, or um, Miss, I'm gonna say Miss Hurley. Don't get mad at me because y'all both y'all names are similar. I'm gonna call you by your last name. If there are some other programs that you think that would benefit from going to that summit, they want the county to send anybody that benefits from touching these populations to come. So I just wanted to pin that there for you all to think about it. And then when I start working on updating the spreadsheet on what I know, again, I'll have Garyana send it out for your feedback because we have to get the final copy out to them before end of month. And that was all I had, Tiffany. Thank you.
Nicole. So it sounds like we are on board and no one's opposed to the idea of outing Kennedy. So
That's
we
important.
can start maybe like a group email or share the document and start adding to it. And then where we finalize the final document, we can all review it and just ensure everything's accurate as far as referral process, points of contacts, and what services are being provided.
Okay.
So you can't do a group email.
That part.
Oh,
So no, so we have a Google Share Drive. So what'll probably happen is we can ask Garyana. I'm sorry, Garyana, I stepped in your role. I'm sorry. Love you. We have a shared drive, and that's one of the things we talked about at the meeting. So there's several things that we can do. Have Garyana reshare that back out to you all. We can upload it in the shared drive. It's a live drive that we can only make edits to that ORJ will be watching, so we cannot communicate with each other on there. But that document will be there. We can actually work in real time if you all would like to do that. We did do that in policy and budget, and it worked out great. So that is another option if you'd like to do that. But you cannot email each other.
oh, not even the subcommittee because that would be quorum, right?
Correct.
Okay, excuse me.
So maybe
we
that
can work
live,
on a live document.
yeah, we could do a live document in the share drive. Can we have that uploaded in the share drive, Garyana, and then sent out to everybody?
Yeah, and just so I'm clear on what document you guys are referring to, is this the service grid or this is the AB 109 summit document?
No, it's a service grid. You sent me a Word
Okay.
document, but upload the Excel one.
Okay.
And then we'll add another tab to it, and that tab will be county departments.
Okay.
And then I'll just ask everybody if you can add in what you may know, and if we can have it done by the end of the month, and then I can get that sent out on March the 3rd. That's the first Monday of March, right? Is that too short for everybody? Or tell me, I'll take that back. Tell me how much time you all need, and then I can circle back out to Santa Clara County if that timeline is too short. I know that everyone has things outside of CAB to do, so I don't want to restrict you to like a week if you don't have that time to do that.
I have one question, and I do think the time frame is feasible just because, I will speak for myself. I'm pretty familiar with, the entities. It's not like we would need to do research on the information. It would just be a collaboration of adding the data to the cells. So would Garyana send out the communication just to ensure that everyone had added their data or their resources to the spreadsheet? That way, we're not going into quorum and we can't communicate with one another in an email to ensure everything is in there.
Say that again.
Would we would I reach out to Garyana directly to send out an email to the other board members, or just to ensure that everyone was able to contribute their resources or their providers before
Oh
we
no, it'll be
finalize.
uploaded. It'll be uploaded in the shared drive for programs and services subcommittee. And then again, correct me, Gariana, if I'm speaking incorrectly. But then she can send out the link to you all again. And when you log in there, you'll be able to see each other actually working on that document. So it'll be a Google shared drive.
Okay, so we'll just set a deadline and then from there it's.
Yeah, so we
that
have a
will-
deadline that's gonna be when we stop touching it so that I know to download it. And then I'll probably circle back to Gariana just to reach out. Or I can reach out to you, Tiff, or whatever, and say, hey, is everybody done? Or let you know that because I can talk to you all and say, are you done? Because I'm going to download this document now and send it out.
I think that was my question, like who can inquire that everyone
Gariana.
has? Perfect, okay.
RJ and Nicole.
Perfect.
See how I did that?
Noted. Are there any other additions on this item as far as the service grid or questions? Do you all feel comfortable with by the end of this month?
Yes, I do.
Is there any other public comments online or in the? I don't see any. So we can move on to item number 3. Going to approve a record of action from November's Program and Service Subcommittee meeting. I personally was not present. Yolanda, would you like for you?
I wasn't present either. I kept abstaining.
You approve it.
Oh, okay.
And you were also present.
Yeah. I would. Yes. I move to approve. Okay.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the notes from the meeting on November 21st, 2024.
I have the motion by Yolanda. Who was the second?
Rita,
Oh, gotcha.
early.
Okay. Motion by Yolanda, second by Rena. Rena Moore, how do you?
I have to abstain because I wasn't present at that meeting.
Well, you can vote on it. It's like you're not saying like the record of action is just saying like what happened at the meeting. So you can vote
I
on it to
reviewed it.
approve it. Yeah, and you reviewed it, so you can approve it still, even if you weren't present for it.
Then I vote to approve it. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Rena Hurley,
Yay, hey, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Tiffany Anaya
Yes.
and Yolanda Hughes. Motion carried.
Great. We'll go on to our next item. Just reviewing, let's see, excuse me. We here have the draft of the program and service work from 2024, as well as the bullet points that came out of the retreat last month in January that we can focus on for 2025. There's a few items that programs and services should be leading on. So the first thing on the list, developing a process for site visits. I know there was some questions, or I personally had some questions on actually like what was the purpose of visiting, or if there was a process established when we're going out to visit, you know, whether it's to learn intake process or service delivery, what resources are being offered, who's the point of contact. So I'm not sure if you all also have questions around what the expectations are, or if we would like to come up with some expectations or process around the program and site visits as far as AB 109 community-based programs that are providing reentry services. So maybe we can spend a little bit of time around this item. Do any of you have any burning questions or ideas around it?
Wanda, I thought, was it last year, Marina?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember Marina coming out and doing a site visit on all the AB 109 providers, and I thought that was good if they still had that information on how they tackled it. If you could share that with the group, and then see if we need to revise it or keep it the way it is. But I did enjoy when you did come out to visit the site and work out.
So like, based on what I remember, right, so each year, I developed different questions, right? So last year, Tanya had helped develop some questions for us to ask, and then the year before Ozzy had. I don't know if we wanted to, as a group, develop the questions that we want to ask, because, it kind of was informal too, like when we did it before, like we had the questions that we were asking, but then like, whatever other questions we had. The feel of the organization and how things. Like it was great how showed me the whole layout and everything. She gave me a tour and stuff. It was good.
As I remember, I hope you guys can hear me. As I remember, when you came out to do the site, you did have already have your questions in mind, what you wanted to ask, and then we kind of filled in on whatever else I could add to whatever else questions that you had. So I think that's a great way if we could come out with the questions again, so it can be I guess asked about all the CBOs that we come in contact with. So
I'll have her hand up too.
Oh.
Nicole,
Do you mind if I give y'all some context, please?
we would
Okay.
love it.
Thank you. So, and we discussed this at the full CAB meeting. So initially, we're trying to get the site visits back to what they originally were. So to give you some context on what site visits were, it was pretty much just going out to visit the sites to understand what they provide in their services. The difference with this year is majority of you guys on the board are providers. So there really isn't a process in place. What was done last year, especially with the service grid, is there needed to be an understanding of what the programs provided. Our previous chairs in both the subcommittees and the full board really wanted to have an understanding of what services some of the providers did in-house, what services they referred out to. That's not the real focus of why we were going out to our providers. So we're trying to get it back to what the real vision was. And it was simply just to go out and meet our providers and understand what they do on site and see their site. And it was extremely helpful, especially if we had people on the board that wasn't familiar. So the fact that all of you are familiar and majority you are our providers, should we relook at our goals and what are our vision for 2025? What we did last year may not work for this year because we have identified our gaps, right? We already have uplifted and requested for money to go towards some of the providers what those gaps are. So I think we need to look at this year is what do we want to get from going to these providers this time? And how often do we want to go? Is this going to be a yearly thing? Is it going to be a every other yearly thing? Like, how do let's restructure and look at what is the objective of these sites and let's come up with a new plan. Because what we did previously is, I think we've done that. So, and I know one of the things we ran into last year was a lot of the providers already come to programs and services and do presentations, right? So us going back out to see them again was kind of pointless because we've already seen them. So the question that I pose to all of you with all these great new ideas and great new members is, what do you all feel, not what the previous folks did, what would you like to get out of doing site visits? What do you all think that the importance or the value would be from going to sites and CBOs? So I'll leave that question in.
Thank you, Nicole. I know for me personally, while on my other hat, I am a service provider and refer out to many services and you all, I'm not familiar like firsthand. It's always secondhand hearing from either my team or our members that we serve on their experiences of intake process, the services that are being provided. And I am curious around maybe what an intake processes look like, or are there overlaps of services, gaps of services? Those are the types of things that I'm interested in. That way we can, we're here to improve things and, make things more seamless for the community. So those are kind of like the things that come to my mind. A great example would be, like the safe individuals coming in, and are we having them fill out like redundant information? I always tell my team, start with the safe. Or for example, if they are coming from the jails, if they were a part of GPS, or were they already referred from probation, that way we're not going over the same information. If we can just access what's already been established and safe. I know sometimes we want to build rapport and learn a little bit more, maybe demographics, how you got here, or individualized data for our individual agencies, and just to avoid some of the trauma or having to relive and repeat the same information or needs again, if it's already in a centralized located information, or if it's taken away from the time that we have to provide the actual service. Since we all know we have other meetings, appointments, and also, hours of operation that limitate us while we're serving the community. So those are always things, I have questions. That's only how we do things at our office. And I know maybe that's not, the ultimate way to do things. Things can always be improved with time. And I don't know how you all do things at your office, or your office. So wearing my other hat in the board member, those are kind of questions that I have, like just kind of having a better understanding of, being in the shoes of the community members that are acclimating back into the community, and what can be kind of like a barrier to accessing services, what is like redundant, or what can we make more available to community members to support them be more successful transitioning back into the community. So I have all of those questions, just tying things together, and what is too much, what is not enough, or what could be more accessible, basically. So I know that was a lot. That's why I didn't want to go first.
Me personally, I would like to know about the intake process to get to those questions. Are we saying the same things in just a different environment? So the intake process for me would be something I personally would like to know how other VOs are doing it.
And I think when I say intake, we all have our, do I need to meet with this intake, this orientation, this workshop, or can I connect straight to service, or like what is the time frame before receiving the service that I'm coming in to receive? I know it can be always different for depending on documents, qualifying, and other verifying. Every individual is different, but I'm just curious of, like how streamlined it is for individuals to address the barrier at hand, or even alleviate a hardship they may be experiencing while acclimating back into me. So that's kind of what I mean by intake. Like, what are the requirements? What are the expectations? What documents are needed, if any? And, are there ways that it can be streamlined, not just for the communities, but also maybe we can also brainstorm for providers, right? On, whether it be sharing information, or even gathering more information, like before we're meeting, before we're going to the intakes, or not making it so hard for individuals to access the resources that, we're funded to provide. Because sometimes I know that we can lose people if we put too many barriers or too many like interventions in between before they come in to actually receive the service that they're coming to us for. They can, get discouraged, or go back to things that are a lot quicker processes, which are not sustainable. I know what I mean.
Yeah.
Tiffany, can I add something? Oh, go ahead, Rena.
When we did our previous presentations, like from the CBOs and stuff like that, did they really touch on the intake process and stuff? It varies, right? I don't remember them all. But because a lot of you are new too, so you guys can get that the presentations and stuff like that too.
So I did get one, I did have the pleasure of sharing a tour and a sit down of programs and services with Ozzy. So although I was not able to facilitate a site visit, I was on the other end as a provider receiving a site visit. And I don't know what went into it before, because, I'm often sharing site visits on this end. I don't know what the questions were proposed or if it was actually, I'm just like someone walking in the doors that had never been and just learning about the center for the first time, or if there was actually scripted questions. For me, I didn't know the difference on my end. So maybe it would be helpful to see like previous questions, and if we're going in with like new goals, or like new intention, I don't know, where we're at with that. Or if we just want to keep it to like a couple, like open-ended questions with the goals we align for 2025, with room to have, a conversation on anything that may come up during the tour. Nicole, I see your hand.
I think Garyana had a question before me. Did you, Garyana?
I I did, and it was kind of like a comment, and I just wanted to see if the subcommittee would find this information valuable about like what are CBO's challenges, and see if those challenges are the same amongst each CBO, because then that could be a recommendation on how to better support the CBO so they can better support the population. So I don't know if the subcommittee would find asking the CBOs, are they running into any challenges in reaching this population, and how we could better support them engaging with the reentry population.
I love that.
Like, yeah, I think as a service provider that our questions will be different than someone being a CAB member and not a service provider. I think it's more about building relationships. So you have a contact person, if a participant needs a certain thing, I know, oh, I could call, I know, let me call her. Let me call her. We're gonna get this together, versus being the police, seeing what you did, what are you doing, who's doing it. I think it should be more about building the relationship.
I hear what you're saying on police. I guess I always just come in with the mind of like, to make things better and improve things. Like we do things oftentimes like on a monthly, on a quarterly, on an annual basis. And naturally with every time we always want to improve or look at what went well and, what could potentially be better. So not really, personal, like wearing a provider hat, or personal, like for the board, but I think, the overall goal should be to improve programs and services, or make it accessible and equitable for the individuals who are actually going to be accessing the services, which the funding's intended for, but maybe, I'm a little biased with my people-centered focus. Nicole, I see your hand.
Oh no, you can finish your comment. I can wait till you get done.
Okay. But I do like, like identifying like points of contacts and, leveraging, continuing to, break down silos or just share, the wealth of information and access points of various services. And that's kind of what I was like curious around, like incentives, timeframes of programs that individuals could be active, points of contacts, intake process. That way, I know like just with a warm handoff approach, like sharing individuals what to expect, or even sharing with like other providers that are here on the board, what the process would be like, what you may need, what it may be like, points of contacts versus, like this place, you can go here and get this. However, maybe if we don't share both, you may have to go back, they're kind of busy, or intake, but when you go back to the second appointment, that's when you actually receive the service. I feel like sometimes just giving like a glance or insight ahead of time can just really like buy some patience or just buy in, when serving the community versus individuals like, well, they said if I came here, I could get housing today, like they said if I came here today that I could get a job, but it's like, what do you mean I need to come here and come back and do this? And then so that's kind of what I mean, just like identifying like what that looks like and what it's actually like, um, while building relationships and identifying points of contacts and nature. But I think also maybe, like building relationship on identifying mutual challenges, like what Garyana had referenced. It wouldn't be so like, like
Mhm.
monitoring, maybe like performance type thing, and also just more of like as an aid or support or like common challenges amongst the providers, and just maybe coming back to the board or the subcommittee and be able to brainstorm. Maybe that would be more of like a focus of the site visits or goals versus identifying what services are offered. Since some of us I know are familiar with the CBOs, we may not be familiar with all the supportive services or the point of contact for intake process. However, we can, go in and just ensure that we have the correct information. I know the ORJ does a great job, like, keeping staff directories and the AB 109 provider. So we don't like have to focus so much on that and can just kind of focus on like gaps as far as challenges the CBOs are individually provided when trying to provide their services, as well as anything we could potentially find that could be like a barrier or a little bit discouraging for members. But maybe we can draft some questions once we come up with like the common goals established.
Also, I'd like to tie into the maybe the questions, we can get a 2-for-1 when we talk about the ADA services. Is there any specialized services your office can provide, such as ADA support? Do you have the ramps? Can they get in? And ADA goes just as far as emotion or mental health rather than just always physical. So I wanted to maybe have a question posed around that so we can get a 2-for-1 and cover the ADA portion.
Nico, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So no, I first wanted to acknowledge your discussion is great. I was taking notes in reference to where all of your thought process are. I think that you covered everything that you all talked about. Are very important things that you want to do on your site visit, and I like the discussion that you all are having. So I guess it's you pretty much kind of already covered it. It's understanding the questions that everyone have. I think that you guys all touched on a lot of different things, maybe bringing them back and identifying what stuff RJ can give and what stuff you can get from the sides, because RJ, I do have some information, and then we did have like some presentations, like how you said the contacts and who that main person is creating that. So I think, especially with being a new group, identifying what each of you would love to see, and then bringing that back here and kind of figuring out what that what you're going to take on your site visit. That doesn't make sense. So I like what you said, Tiffany, in reference to coming up with goals and objectives for your site visits. I think also thinking about when you want to do it. As you're coming up with these goals and objectives, what's your timeline? Because what we ran into last year, it was done at the end of the year, and we didn't get a chance to get it done. And then we also had changes within the committee, so it wasn't programs and services fault. But what's that deadline? And then create a timeline on when you're going to identify your goals and objectives, when you're going to put your questions together, when you guys are going to review it, and then when you're going to start. So you all have some great ideas, but that will be the next step I recommend is figuring out what that timeline look like and then get it structured.
Support. Garyana brought up the challenges experienced by CBOs. So I know in the AB 109 quarterly reports that ORJ receives, there is a question that addresses that. So if you guys want, maybe what we can do is kind of review what those challenges have been in the last fiscal year, if there's any common themes among those. And then ORJ can bring that back maybe to the next meeting or something, and that can maybe further flush out. Like, is this a question that really needs to be asked, or is there maybe a specific point to challenges that we're seeing that we need to like kind of ask about? But overall, it does kind of sound like your guys' main theme is really, like, from everything that's been discussed, is bridging the gaps in services between the providers, right? Bridging the gaps and understanding of what the intake process is, those requirements, those expectations, bridging the gap in communication and building those relationships between all of the CBOs, and then determining how we can better serve the clients, right?
Thank you, Kimmy. I like the idea of like, going off like the last fiscal year. Maybe if we were able to use like, some of that, just if you see some like trends or common, if maybe like 3 challenges, that might be a little high hopes, but maybe in addition to that, within custody surveys, that can be, a focus along with the goals that we had came up with in the CAB retreat can help align us with our questions and focus of site visit. Of course, we're going to, visit a site, see it in person, learn about the services offered and like, meet the point of contact or see the team. And it can also be aligned with the goals that we came up with the retreat and the data. I would really like to go off data, and, instead of, personal bias or what we think we may know. So if it can be off from like, partners and providers of the AB19 reports, if there's something like a common trend in addition of like how that compares to like the in-custody surveys, that may be interesting to support us. Maybe a combination of that questions in addition to the questions or focus that we had kind of aligned during the CAB last month.
Do you guys remember how many site visits you did? Did you visit
I think we were each assigned 3. Oh, I was assigned 3.
3? Would be good.
But I guess it's by however many providers.
I think 3 would for each of us would be good.
And was there also like a live document available as far as like questions that everyone could contribute to? Or would it be like a separate like group meeting? I know that we meet like on a monthly basis, and when we just talk around like time in spring, I know we also discussed about potentially doing some of our like ambassador assignments in the spring with some supervisors. So sometimes when we just put things off like month to month, I'm just curious of like how we can keep the site questions alive. And then we're gonna get to like the in-custody questions in a minute, but maybe if there's like also working documents in the shared drive, we can work on them and then we can discuss them before we come back together in March next month. Guyana or Kimmy, is that possible? Maybe if we had a question or see if like maybe last year's questions, if any, or we just create a blank document that we can either number one, like add common goals to, or if we want to wait until we receive the data from you all, go over the in-custody surveys together. But I guess I'm curious, like if we actually need to have like live document, if everyone feels comfortable with that, or if we should even potentially, if everyone has capacity to, well, like I think subcommittees have separate working meetings where we could actually like schedule a meeting to get the questions done when we receive your data, or Garyana or Nicole, can you let me know how that works?
Yeah, I think all options are possible. So we can add a questions document to the Google Drive, and then the subcommittees can all work on it simultaneously. You also have time here. I think there's about maybe 20 or so minutes left in this meeting, and we can start drafting the questions or the goals here now. And then we can transfer this document to the Google document on the Google Drive, and then you can further flesh it out or add to it as need be. How would you guys like to proceed?
I'm thinking maybe if we can see if it's possible to get some more data in regard to the annual reports from last fiscal year. We could like be more like data driven as far as the goals and coming up, because I know that we also need to think about in custody questions, which we'll need to look back to last year's data just to kind of drive us in, our take on this year's in custody questions. So maybe we can actually like put that item off, because I know there's a few other goals and along with the work plan that we also need to discuss today. And I'm open.
So when you said put that item off, what item are you referring to?
I'm thinking like instead of drafting questions for the site visits, maybe just allowing you all time, like what Kimmy mentioned, to look into the annual reports to see if there was any challenges that were reported by multiple agencies that we could possibly discuss as the committee, in addition to separate item, the in-custody surveys. Just reviewing going back to the data from last year, because we need to be thinking of how we want to facilitate and what information we would actually be looking for and for who. It's kind of connected and similar, but I'm thinking like between, the data from the CBOs and then also the surveys that were collected from the individuals that were in custody last fiscal year, that could potentially be supportive in aligning us in addition to the goals that we established in the retreat last month. That way today we're not kind of just,
Yeah.
what do you do? How, from what time, just kind of more like randomized questions. I would like to have time to review some data. That way, hopefully it would be more effective with the site visits.
Yeah.
I know that time is sensitive, and hopefully if we still get, started like the next quarter, we'll have time to, before we get into the fall, and start making like suggestions, the policy and budget.
Yeah. And I know a lot of that data was included in the binders that you guys received at the retreat, the in-custody survey results and the presentation from the partners and providers. But if there's anything else that you guys would want me to send to you, or I can send that to you if you don't have that information, so you guys can review it and then come to the next subcommittee with questions that you have in mind based off of the data that you reviewed. Is that what you're looking for?
I'm just thinking, like, in addition, if Kimmy could look into the data from the annual reports that CBO's provided for 23-24 fiscal, I believe, in addition to the in-custody survey results that we have in the binders. I feel like that can lead us in drafting questions to be more aligned with the goals for 2025 of the CAB.
Ideally, when would you want to have that data back to then review it?
I know you mentioned next month's program and service subcommittee, and if for some reason, it's available before then, I just don't know how it could potentially be shared. Since we can't, like, well, you all could send it to us, or
Yeah, Gary, honest, that's something we could like throw in the shared drive, or would we be able to just email that out, or how would?
So what, like the quarterly reports or what in the shared drive?
Yeah, so basically I'm gonna go through the quarterly reports and look at the narrative where everyone documents any challenges they experience and identify any common themes. That way it can help the subcommittee formulate questions, or maybe just like veer away from asking about challenges if we already kind of have data that really speaks to like transportation being an issue, for example. Yeah, we want to be able to provide them with that information, but is that something we could just email out, or could we throw it on the drive, or I guess how?
Yeah, I think we can even, oh, sorry to cut you off, Kimmy, go ahead. Yeah, I think both options are possible. We could email it out and add it to the shared drive so you guys could look at it right away. And then if something happens, you would still have it in the Google Drive, if that makes sense.
So maybe we can plan to draft the questions next meeting, and if we can all review the data that Kimmy and Garyana are able to send out or upload to the drive, in addition to the surveys. That way we're all feeling informed and prepared to ask any questions. Maybe if there is a document uploaded that we can all work on before then and get out of the way, or be proactive, then that can be okay, and we can discuss what's already there or establish for the site visits, and then potentially come up with this, once we draft the questions, come up with assignments in a time frame for the site visits. Does that sound for you all?
Sounds good.
So if that works for you, Kimmy and Garyana, if we can look for an email or just a indication that it's in the shared drive, that way we can review that in addition to the in-custody surveys, and see like if there's any trends reported amongst community members and providers that may want to align us for our goals and questions that we may want to have going into the site visits. With the plan that next meeting, if there are already questions established from us individually or in the drive, that we can come up with the questions and delegate site assignments for us to go out and visit. That way we have well in advance time. That way, if things come up, other things, we have time to get them done and we're not feeling like crunched or running out of time at the end of the year. Nicole, do you have anything you would like to add or questions? Are we missing anything?
No, I think you pretty covered it. In reference to the just remember in reference to the in custody surveys, you were still waiting. Yeah, you all had some questions for Jody that we kind of put off because it was end of the year. So and then what we talked about at the full cab is think about the frequency. Is this something that we want to continue to do every year? I would also recommend not just looking at last year, but the year before, because we only did women last year. So what would the focus be this year? And another key thing to keep in mind was I think it's important for us to look at how many we were able to reach. So troubleshooting that as well to see how we can actually reach more, you know. So those are just some key items, but I think you pretty much covered everything. But what was really helpful that I like you're talking about is the live documents. One thing I said at the full cab is the goal this year is to kind of get that share drive updated. So as you all are in there, let us know what you would like to be in there. But I can definitely tell you from policy and budget, that was very helpful for me to be able to have a live document to work on, especially when we had big key items to get done for the year. So that when we came to this meeting with only having an hour and a half to talk, we were able to get some things done and discuss it. So it does make it helpful.
Thank you, Nicole. Yes, I definitely want to discuss the in-custody surveys. I was just referring to the inside visits. So I think we're good on that until today, until we receive some data. And then we all have the in-custody surveys and the binders we receive in the retreat. Or we can always reach out to Garyana if we need support reaccessing the data. I know I was really interested on, I know I'm always interested in just how many responses we get back from the individuals in custody who identify as female versus like how many responses came back as male. And I know, my nosy brain, I'm like, well, what time was it administered? How was it administered? What population? I'm just like wondering like how warm or welcoming, because unfortunately I do know, like if it's a certain or culture or climate, anything you ask me to do is going to be a no. Or it can also be just speaking back to like the ADA thing, like, was it a language thing? Is it a reading thing? Is it maybe like like reading glasses for the glare if it was on the tablets, like just having it every way possible and possible. Does someone need support with actually like facilitating? Like, do I need to ask the questions and like document your or does it need to be more confidential? And maybe that's why we're not capturing. Like, I just have like a lot of questions, and maybe all of these things have been covered. I'm new. I have a million questions. So I know that we had previously discussed last year around like inviting Jody to one of these meetings. That way we could just kind of ask her and learn more, and then maybe we can decide like, how often do we want to do the survey? How do we administer it? And how do we capture the data or reach the individuals that we want to reach? So maybe we can think about like some questions for Jody versus questions like for the in-custody survey. I know like I had a lot of questions around just the percentages of like what was identified like top priority needs, or what they felt like was not accessible, as far as like what would you feel more supported being successful integrating back to the community, or what do you feel supported in like in those areas. So I know I kind of just had questions around like more like demographics and logistics around the surveys for Jody, but I don't know, some of you were here potentially even like had a role in drafting the question. So I really also am curious on like, you know, your experience and what was your take on after like drafting the questions, getting the data back. Also, I would like to know like what questions you all may have, or if there's anything that you would potentially like to do differently or wish that we would have captured or suggest with the surveys in custody.
Well, of course, we'd like to get more responses and stuff like that, however we can, talk to Jody and stuff like that, how, once we figure all that out, how we can get more of the population who are in custody to complete the surveys, that'd be great. I think last year it was, done on the tablets too, right? Our recollection.
It was done.
Yeah.
Well. What, has her hand up as well?
Nicole,
Oh no, I was just agreeing, saying yeah. That it was on
was
the
your hand
tablets.
also up?
It could have been, and I had forgot to put it down, but I did want to I was looking at your items that was on there, and we were having a good discussion. I didn't want you to forget in case you had to come back to the mapping process and recommendations and then your work plan too. Hour go past fast.
It sure does. So maybe now that we all have like maybe like logistical questions or like what we would have liked to heard more of. When we review the in custody, we can spend more time on that. Should we just be focusing on overall priorities for the year for our subcommittee versus spending time in each individual item, Nicole?
Are you referring to the mapping progress and recommendations to date?
Yes.
So I guess it's that item was pretty much mapping out how you all will be tracking the progress of programs. So ORJ, they do a survey every year for all the CBOs, right? Then we have our in custody surveys. And now we have these programs that are put in place for that one time 15 million that we'll also need to monitor. So what would that look like? How are we going to map that process out and get that data in reference to the recommendations? I did, and Garyana, I don't think you sent that out yet. But at our full cap meeting was requesting that all of the recommendations that we have, not just the current ones, but the ones we have overall within cap from the beginning, be sent out to all of the cap members to kind of look at the recommendations that we have currently. But this bullet was, how do you all want to do that? Having an understanding of how ORJ is going to be tracking the progress from their end, because, you know, for the CBOs that are funded, and how are you guys are going to keep an eye on that as well for the new year, because you have to come up with recommendations that will be shared with the full, not come up with recommendations, but based on the data that you have, come with recommendations regarding either gaps or services or what you identify from a program perspective, and share that with policy and budget as well as the full committee. Does that make sense?
So are we referring to, did the one-time excess funds cover the gaps in service or cover the areas of focus that were established last year for the board?
Well, it's both. It's everything. So programs and services, they look at based on the data that is provided, initially provided by ORJ every year. From the data they collect from the CBOs, they usually look to identify what those gaps in services are, and then we uplift recommendations based on that, right? So that's the key objective of programs and services. But since then, we've now added on that in custody survey. So you have data from that. And we've just now given funds for those one-time asks. So that's another area. And I know that the CIO office is going to be putting something together in reference to tracking that data. So I guess, Kimmy, we have to figure out how that data is going to be coming back to us at CAP so that you guys have that information to be able to look at that as well. So we want to make sure from a programs and services perspective, is this covering the gaps that we have identified in our recommendations and what we just uplifted in that one-time ask, which was of course the housing, employment, pre and post release services, and behavioral health.
So potentially we can cover like while visiting those AB 109 funded entities that receive the one-time funds for, you know, specific services or to expand specific services or improve. Maybe that can be part of that provider site visit.
So I think
we can put.
I know the question mark that we have, and we have to find out from Patrice, so Kimmy, is I know on the back end, a process is a process is being put in place to evaluate those programs that are going to receive the funding. So I think that's the question mark, because right now, Kimmy and them, they collect data for CBOs that are currently funded. So I think in order for you all, not us, to map out this process, is we have to have an understanding of how that data is going to be collected and given to ORJ. So that's a Kimmy and Patrice question. So I think if that'll be the question to maybe come back for your next meeting, is I don't know if they know yet because it's still being put in place, is what is that going to look like in reference to data being captured for that one-time ask? Because then that data will be given to all of you. Does that make, am I talking the language correctly? Give me from a data perspective, correct me, please.
No, you are. I think, I don't know that we have it clearly all laid out yet for the 15 million. We have a general process laid out because, we have new RFPs and all that stuff coming up too, that we're going to be evaluating, but, we just don't have the specifics just yet. We have generally, this is how it's gonna, the timeline of how we're gonna roll things out, but we don't have everything like built out and yet.
Okay.
So that's
so maybe,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
Nicole. I was just gonna share maybe like if we do want to consider, like I was just thinking we, kind of like going back to what you said earlier, Rolanda, like if we're gonna be out on these site visits, if there was something we need to be intentional around for a specific site, if they were one of the sites that received some of the excess funds, we could potentially spend some time just like addressing or surveying that need while we were there. Kind of like, if we wanted to address any challenges from the data that's been reported, like previous fiscal year or maybe like the first quarter of this year. However, we can just kind of hold off on that idea based off of processes and what the unknown, I'll call it. However, as far as like the ADA, I know that was a focus from last year and into this year, how individuals are being served, whether it be, like any type of disability, and that could potentially prevent someone from accessing services, whether it be mental or physical or any other need. I don't know if we could potentially like, brainstorm and just inquire or see like if there is a process or if there are capabilities to serve individuals who may not be able to like see, hear, or maybe having some kind of like learning disability or like mobility issue or mental health, like how because I know that can be supportive for a lot of us, like as a provider and as a board, if there are some agencies that do have some resources or processes for individuals can still connect to services, still go to school, still receive support that they need where it's not hard for them to connect to the service or be successful eliminating that barrier, achieving that goal. Is that something, that can also go into the site visit questions? Nicole, can we focus on two of our priorities during that time?
yeah, you can focus on whatever you would like to. Yes.
I just want to make sure we're not doing too much.
No, I mean
Our
that's a
first
question.
program and service committee of the year.
Well, no, that's a question for you all. I mean, I love the way that you are talking. I just wanted to merely be here to kind of give feedback from, from our retreat and the full CAP meeting. So if it's something that, based on that data you're going to get from previous stuff, I think it's important that you put those questions together like that. I just wanted to point out that in reference to your mapping, is still some key missing items. And when we said mapping at the CAB retreat, it was kind of like coming up with your timeline on when you're going to do these things and understanding that process of when this information needs to be given back, like our deadline of getting the budget and recommendations and all that stuff put together. So that piece that in reference to the one-time funding is still important. We just don't know when it's going to be finalized. So I definitely would say add those questions in there. But yeah.
I guess my question is more for you all. You know, I know that this was something that, just due to unforeseen reasons and changes last year, I don't believe like all of the site visits and then like also just the inquiry on like surveying on, you know, the ADA capabilities and capacity of providers, when it comes to serving community members. Is that something that you all want to focus on during the site visits and,
That's really a good question.
I think I would like to focus on that, like I said, rather work smarter than harder and then to come back just for ADA services, we could just encompass it while we're there at the site visit. You know, I know, one thing I shared with the full cab was that too, a lot of our programs already are CARF accredited, which that ADA component is within there, but how really, is it in there just to cover that CARF requirement to get their accreditation, or you really have ADA accessibles, and how is that working? So I would like to know more about that.
okay, that is a positive thing. I think that will align us as far as our questions for our site visits, and we'll be intentional on working towards multiple priorities that we have for 2025, which is great because once we have, you know, goal and purpose for the visits, then we can come up for the timeline and delegating the assignments of, you know, how many sites we actually need to visit and splitting up amongst the four of us. So do you want the timeline today, Nicole, or would it be okay to set the timeline for the map next committee once we have the questions and then you know, do the math of the delegation and the
Oh,
assignments?
Oh, no, you have time to work on it. This is your 2025
Okay.
goals. Because I mean, as part of your work plan, you may want to add that in there. So it's not, these are not some things that have to be done today. They were just more of a discussion of what your goals were, and then to look at your work plan and make adjustments to that and maybe, you know, add some of these things in there. So it's up to you all. I believe that I know that usually we start having the discussion around recommendations. I would say think it's around like September or something like that, because we have to start. I know policy and budget have to start working on the budget and getting things typed together. And then everything is rolled out to CCP around November. And then the budget meetings, I think, start in December. I could be off a month or two, but I would say safely plan around like, you know, we want to have an idea of September. And Kimmy, I'm not sure on when you guys get the results back from all the CBOs and do your report. Is that around August, September? Huh?
For which report?
You know where the report that you guys put out from the CBOs that kind of shows their numbers and
Annual.
the annual report?
I think it is. Well,
I think it's September.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's around that time frame. So usually
Yeah,
once yeah, usually when they give that report, then that's when the discussion starts, you know, around based on that and the surveys you have, recommendations that may come from programs and services, and it ties in with. So that kind of gives you that what your window of time is. Whenever you all want to start working on that, and that's your work plan that Ariana have up. It's pretty much up to you all.
I'm thinking, you know, the majority of the site visits and the work would get done, you know, like in the end of Q2 and mostly Q3. That way we would be ready to make recommendations by the end of Q3 or beginning of Q4. Would that be feasible? Wouldn't that put us on track, Nicole, in addition to the ambassador assignments?
Yeah, and then you know, and then they're changing the way they're doing the ambassador, so it'll be a little bit more easier for everybody as well. So that does sound feasible. And then as when I don't know if you guys want to bring this back at your next meeting, and I am recommending that, you know, everyone looks at it, try to look at it at every meeting, but then look at this, take a deeper dive into this, and your work plan is where you actually map out that timeline.
You said this meeting where we'll actually map out the timeline, our subcommittee meeting.
Yeah, so this every subcommittee meeting, you should be taking a look at your work plan. And I know that we didn't really have a chance to look at it because we had some great conversations. So maybe bring it back the next one, but you'll go through this whole work plan and you'll make some adjustments and maybe add on some of the things you talked about today. But here's where you actually do your timeline.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll probably say if no one had a chance to look at it, when you walk away from here is look at it. So when you come back next month, you'll have that discussion.
So in here is like 2024, or we need to actually be making the 2025, or are we still working on this one since things?
You would
everything
change
was-
that to 2025.
Oh, okay.
So pretty much you would start from top to bottom and read through here, and you all will have a discussion like you just did and make adjustments. Some of these things you may have already done, so you can mark off completed and then determine who's going to be responsible. So it's pretty much what we just did, but we didn't get a chance to have this up and look at it. So you want to go through here and adjust it based on your conversation today, add, take away, remove, or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
And I can put a draft copy of your work plan in the Google folder so you can make those adjustments.
Perfect. Thank you, Gariana.
I had a question. So, maybe it's to Nicole. I know when we was at the full cab, we discussed the, behavioral health board that's coming online and the deadline is February 28th. If you wanted to participate, or is it be on that board or as a committee member?
Oh, you're saying the application is it to be on that board?
Yeah.
Yes, the
Is that what that
application.
deadline's for?
Yes. So if you are interested in being on a behavioral health board, which will consist of AOD and mental health, that's what the application is for. If you just want to listen, you don't have to apply, but if that's something that you will want to be on that commission, you want to submit the application.
Would that come under our work plan, also under collaborate with other external boards?
No, not for you. That's part of OCEC. So OCEC will be
Okay,
working
OCEC.
on establishing a list of external partners, and then we will need to possibly at our next meeting decide on identify who's already on certain stuff, identify what those meetings are going to be, and then have people sign up for that.
So that doesn't cover that part.
And what part is that on here? Where?
Thank you for the clarification.
So the survey is separate from the site visit, Nicole, just reviewing the work plan under conducting program services qualitative survey.
Wait, which one?
I'm in the second row, in the second column, programs and services qualitative survey.
Mhm.
This CBO survey is separate from the site visit.
It's the same thing. Well, no, I'm sorry. Develop survey for, I believe, and Rena, Renee, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was at one point there was a discussion of creating one. It's not I'm sorry, y'all. It's not required that you do. And so that's what I mean by reviewing this work plan. Ask questions about it, remove things that you guys are not working on. So based on what we talked about today, we're not developing a survey for the CBOs. You're going to do a questionnaire, but you're not developing a survey. So you're going to be adjusting some of those wordings on here. So we would change that wording because it's not a survey that you're developing. You're developing a survey for in custody participants, but you're putting together questions that you're going to be asking to the CBOs.
Perfect.
And we are responsible for updating this. This isn't something that Gariana does, correct? And I'm so sorry. I know you always do so much. Gariana is just as far as like agenda updates and notes and stuff like that. I just don't want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah, Nicole, I think that was the intention, is for the programs and services to update it, or well, what do you guys need support with from our end?
No, I'm definitely not throwing more at you. I just wanted to ensure that I was understanding correctly.
That's correct.
Okay.
I need to come back and be like, who did this?
Yeah, so that goes back to, like I mentioned, is when you read this, the point is it doesn't stay the same. So since you guys are new, ask questions on stuff if it doesn't make sense. Remove things that you all feel like you're not working on for 2025. So things on here will change. That's the whole purpose of reviewing the work plan. So you'll need to discuss as a committee what's on here, what you're taking off, what we've done, and then based on the conversation today, add things that need to be put there. And Gary, I think that whole working document thing is going to be a thing. So for all committees so far. So just FYI, because OCEC is asking too.
Before
Yeah.
like removing or updating the document, would I be able to reach out to like, can I email like you, Nicole, and Garyana just to confirm? Like, in my mind, I feel like some of these things have been done and I wasn't here last year. So before just deleting and chopping it off, I want to just confirm like this is has already been completed and no longer a focus.
Well, won't you
For
do this?
example,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, well, you do this since we didn't really have time, or you all didn't have time to look at it. Why not make it an action item for March and just tell everybody, hey, look at this before our next meeting and come back and be ready for discussion at our March meeting and move it up to the top of your agenda to ensure that it gets talked about first before going into other items.
The way you think.
Oh yeah, that way you don't have to stress about it. Then you can make it a working item. I mean, then you can take it as share and make updates and
Perfect. And when you say everybody, you mean the subcommittee, correct?
Yes, ma'am, the subcommittee.
I feel like we discussed all of the 2025 priorities, and the next steps. So that would be as far as the timeline. Budget.
Okay, okay. Oh, that is policy. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that is.
Okay. That is all I have on item number 4. Do any of you all have anything else that you would like to add? Or am I missing anything, Nicole? I
No,
feel like
you
we
got
have
it.
next steps.
You
but-
got it. You did great.
And should we go over the next steps, or do you think Ariana have them, or?
Yeah, I have some next steps, and please feel free to add something if I missed it. So far, we are going to update the service grid in updating cells, and this is going to be, and they have a due date by the end of the month. I'm going to upload documents and also send documents to the subcommittee, including the work plan, any data stuff that we have, and questions that you guys can begin starting drafting questions for your site visits. We're also next meeting, you're also going to review and revise the subcommittee work plan, and then also continue to discuss goals and objectives for site visits, and then create a timeline with identified goals and when to start. Did I miss anything?
No, that sounded like everything, Garyana, and so when you send out like the grid, then will that also be like with the deadline, like where I could email you and Nicole, like if I have questions around if everything's ready and final, or
Yeah, you can let us know when it's complete, or is that what you're asking, Tiffany?
yeah, and then we'll also be prompted like when we can begin adding questions to the share drive.
Yeah, I'll probably send you an email after this meeting to let you guys know with the documents that I intended to send you, and like you guys can begin.
And then next month we'll be starting with the mapping of the work plan for 2025, reviewing
Yeah.
2024.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. So reviewing the work plan and then revising it, and then making sure it's aligned with your priorities for 2025.
Awesome. And then lastly, the data from the annual report from last fiscal year will also be available next.
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay.
I'm already pulling stuff together.
Awesome. That sounds great. That's everything that I can think of. Thank you so much, Gariana and Nicole, for your support and guidance. Um, so the next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 20th at 11 a.m. and that adjourns today's meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.